Hi, I'm Tim Belcher. We've got 25 people coming over tonight for a gourmet pizza party, and I needed some help, so I made some pizza peels out of scrap wood. A walnut and a cherry, even engraved them to give away as gifts. So scrap wood pizza peels. This is how I made them. Oh, and if you stick around to the end of the video, I'll teach you how to make a pizza on one of these, including spinning it. So this is what I'm going to be working with. I went through my scrap pile and pulled out quite a few pieces of walnut. Some of it is damaged and split. Most of them have one reasonably flat side and one unfinished side. None of the edges have been trimmed. I even have some longer, possibly more difficult pieces to work with for the center or the handle section. I also have 3 pieces of cherry, some of which is nice and some of which is checked with some of these bug marks. So we'll see how that turns out as well. I'm going to take these pieces and run them through the thickness planer to get them down to less than ½ an inch prior to cleaning up any of the edges or laying out the actual peel. But first I needed to trim that badly checked and cracked board. 20 to 30 minutes on the thickness planer got most of the boards to just under a ½ inch thick. There was one board that I wanted to use that was a little twisted, nothing that a shim and some hot glue to a scrap of plywood wouldn't take care of. And then it was on to the table saw and my joining sled to get one side flat. And once I had one nice flat side on all the boards, I could run them through the table saw to get a nice second joint. And I could finally test my alignment and layout for the peel. I did this both on the walnut and the cherry. Then I just trimmed the boards that needed it to length, and I could move on to the glue up. I did use Titebond 3. I know I'm going to be washing these after each use. And given that everything was only a ½ inch thick, I was fairly generous with the amount of glue between the joints. So it's the next morning and I've got both the panels glued up. They look good. They're ready to be shaped into the actual peel. And for that, I've got an old cheap pine peel. I like the shape of the front. It's actually perfect for a pizza peel. The whole peel should not be round. It should be squarish with a round front. The handle's far too short. Ours are gonna be longer. You wanna be able to lock it under your arm as you're working the ovens. And also on these cheap ones, they're all double-sided. They're shaved and shaped into a point in the middle, and that is so if you get this wet, you can flip it and continue to use the other side. I'm not gonna do that. I want mine to be one-sided. A peel, in my opinion, should be one-sided. So we're just gonna shape down almost like a spatula. And once I had a shape that I liked, it was off to the bandsaw to cut them out. Once I had used the sander to come back to my lines, I did need to do a little bit more work on the bandsaw for the handles. And this work on the sander does take quite a firm grip to keep control, but overall this only took about 15 minutes for both peels. some quick work with a 1/4 inch round over just to ease those edges. And then it was off to sanding. I use this detail sander, this mouse sander, to ease those edges even more and really work on how nice it was to hold. Then onto the CNC, where I'm just going to super glue it in place and then come up with a quick design. This first one is a gift to my co-host of this August supper club party. The second one goes to a good friend who has a large outdoor pizza oven and also gave me the dough recipe I would be using for this party. And lastly, a butcher block oil and food safe wax finish. Thank you very much for watching. If you're not subscribed, please do, and if you liked the video, please hit that like button. After all was said and done that evening, we made 25 to 30 pizzas, and these peels were not only easy but very fun to build. And remember to stick around, and I'll show you how to make a pizza on one of these things. Again, thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Hey, thanks for watching. You stuck around long enough, I assume you want to learn how to make a pizza on one of these things. Let's start with the dough. So the other night, I made a couple of extra batches of dough and we froze them. So I'm gonna take this batch and cut it into 4 equal dough balls. The recipe for this dough is fairly easy. First, start with 00 flour, 4½ cups in a mixing bowl, 3 teaspoons of salt, 2 teaspoons of sugar, a little bit of olive oil, and 1 3/4 cups of water. Take an additional 1/4 cup, pour it in a small bowl, and activate 1 packet of Fleischmanns yeast. That water needs to be warm, not hot, and not cold, just warm. And put in 1 teaspoon of sugar to get that yeast started. And then give it 5 minutes for the yeast to activate. Then add that water with the yeast and the 1 3/4 cup water into the mixing bowl, mix on low until it becomes 1 ball, knead it on the countertop for 2 to 3 minutes, form a dough ball, put it in a bowl that's been wiped with olive oil, put a little bit of olive oil on top of the ball, cover it in saran wrap and let it sit for 4½ hours. While that dough is rising for a few minutes, let's talk about spinning a pizza. I've got good news and bad news. The bad news is it takes a lot of practice to spin a pizza dough. The good news is everyone you've ever met that can spin a pizza dough learned and practiced the same way, with a towel. And that's what we're gonna do today. Okay, first of all, this is a square-ish towel and it's a little damp. That's what you need to practice. The first part of spinning a dough is not actually spinning it, it's slapping it. You'll see me in the video doing this to stretch the dough. There's a method to this that I want to show you. And effectively, what you're doing when I'm slapping it is trying to get my fingers right before the edge. I want a little bit of dough around my finger to stop it, and then the motion of it stopping and coming off my arm actually stretches the dough. And as I'm slapping it hand to hand, my left hand is feeling the edge of that dough, making sure that it is stretching sort of equal. And you'll notice as I'm slapping it that the dough is turning. And the first part of spinning it is just carrying on with that hand. So I've slapped over and I simply carry it on and spin. Make sense? One more time, I'm slapping and I spin. Simple. Easy. When I spin it, in general, I want to catch it with both hands palm down, just like that. Okay? From this position, I simply turn over my right hand and I can spin it again. And again, most times when I'm catching it with the backs of my hands palm down. I've got my oven set to 550 degrees, as high as it goes on bake, and I've got a small stone in the oven warming up. Do yourself a favor and put flour and work it into your peel. You want this surface non-stick. Don't go crazy with it, just work that flour in and it will alleviate a lot of the friction of the pizza peel. In addition, a pinch of cornmeal. And again, the cornmeal particles are much larger than flour and tend to help that pizza move from the peel. All right, let's press some dough. A little bit of flour on the table, a little bit of flour on the dough, flour on your hands. And what I'm gonna do is use my hand to press towards the edge, not the middle and not the very edge. I wanna be right inside the very edge. And what I'm doing here is working air out and trying to pop as many bubbles as I can. And again, I'm not pressing down on the very edge right before it. And you'll see the dough flattening and getting a little bit larger as I work my way around it. Again, you can use one hand, two hands, depends on the size of the dough. This is a very small dough. I'm also pulling meat into the middle. I do not want to press the middle directly any more than I have to. I want as much meat of the ball to remain in the center of the dough. I'm gonna work this until it gets large enough to handle and I feel I've gotten most of the air out near the crust. Now, I'm gonna help this stretch a little bit. I'm gonna hold it, my palms down, and I'm putting my thumbs right under the edge and just stretching a little bit of that edge crust. Again, I want that a little bit thinner, and the entire thickness of this a little bit more uniform. I'm just being very careful not to stretch the center at this point. And again, that's a flattened dough. Now, I'll put it in one hand, put my fingers underneath, and I'm gonna slap it just like I did the towel. And again, I can go fairly slow with this so that you can see what I'm doing. And again, my fingers are right under the edge, and I'm trying to maintain a circle by not slapping or not going much past 45 degrees. Now, the truth is you don't need to spin it. I can slap it all the way out. Spinning just stretches the center faster. When I've got the size I want, I'm gonna flip it right onto the peel. Now, you'll see me, as I'm carrying this to the oven in a few minutes, shaking it. You can test how much that pizza is gonna move on the peel now, okay? Again, I can pick this back up, I can flour if it's not moving very well, I can flour a little bit more, I can even put a little bit more cornmeal on. I can even take it up and say I want it larger and just keep spinning. As long as my dough is looking good and I'm watching the middle and I'm not getting too big. But again, right now before the sauce, always a good time to make sure that pizza moves. Pizza sauce. Pizza sauce is basically pureed tomatoes, salt, sugar, some garlic, maybe a little basil, plenty of YouTube videos on how to make different sauces. You can buy it, it's absolutely fine. For a pizza this size, 1 ladle, you don't need any other tool to spread the pizza other than the ladle. You're trying not to press it down hard into the peel, just glide along the surface and get an even spread. Cheese, we used pure mozzarella and we shredded it ourselves. That often turns a little bit greasy when you make a pizza. Many restaurants will actually cut their mozzarella with other types of cheese like cheddar. Just a little bit. I like pure mozzarella. I'll deal with the grease. Again, on the peel, trying not to spill it around, try not to mess up the peel, try not to get the peel wet. Pepperoni in a Mickey Mouse Ziploc bag. I have a great friend, his name is on the back of this pizza peel. He actually gave me the pizza dough recipe that I gave you a little while ago. He turned me on to shredded pepperoni. A little bit of sausage, a little bit more cheese. And this is ready for the oven. I'm gonna put this in the camera and gently shake it to show you that I can get that pizza to move. Once I see that, I know I can put it on the stone. Again, I'm gonna pull the stone out. I'm gonna make sure that I can move that pizza. And once it touches, I'm simply pulling it back. This is an aluminum peel. This is for spinning and removing pizzas from the oven. You could certainly use that peel, but every once in a while, when you're pulling a pizza out, you'll put a hole in the bottom of the crust, sauce will leak out on the top. If that happens to your wooden peel, it'll become very sticky, very hard to continue to use. This is useless for making a pizza. I only use it to spin dough or spin pizzas. And pull them out from the oven. And after 8 to 10 minutes, pizza's done. Now I'm gonna let that sit for about 5 minutes before I cut it, just to let it firm up a bit. Cut on a pan, not on the actual peel. And again, none of this gingerly cutting. Cut through, once across. And we're done. Good firm crust. Pizza holds flat. I'm gonna eat some pizza. Thanks for watching, guys. You want to see?
No, I don't.
I feel like I should have my hair down.
You should.
I feel like you should stand
No, because this is your production.
Stand beside me.
I'm just here.
It's not my production.
All right, ready? Are you ready to get down?
I was like, wait. She took her hair down.
All right, ready? Come on, leave the camera. Hi, I'm Tim Belcher. Oh, hold on a second.